And now I would like to introduce to you the VP of Operations for Kohola Brewery. Chef Isaac Bancaco is a celebrated Maui-born chef known for blending traditional island flavors and modern techniques with experience leading award-winning kitchens and mentoring the next generation of culinary talent. He is passionate about honoring Hawaii's food culture while driving innovation in the local culinary industry. As the morning motivational speaker of the Entrepreneur Bootcamp, Isaac will inspire participants with his journey in leadership, operation, and entrepreneurial growth. My friends, Isaac Bancaco.
I don't know, after Jade's speech, I don't know how much inspiration I'm going to be, but. Got so many mics. I'll take a little step stool too. Yeah, just joking. Where's Royce? Royce is the only guy in here that's a little bit shorter than I am, so. I see you. I just give her the. Well, so if some of you are wondering why I'm here, my boss, Mary Anderson, couldn't make it. She's actually traveling. She has a couple other businesses aside from what I'm going to explain to you today. But she was like, hey, Isaac, I need you to fill in at the Women's Leadership Entrepreneurial Talk. And I was like, sounds perfect, sure. So here I am. I'm Isaac Bancaco, and as I got introduced, formerly I was a chef on the island, and I see a lot of familiar faces in here. Nobody's visited my restaurants more than Louis. So Louis, I don't know where he went. Hi, Louis. And I see a lot of people in here that I've either come across with. So welcome, and truly, today, you guys all are really the reason why it keeps chefs like myself going. Well, as fate would have it, we get into things. I'm no longer a chef. I'm the VP of operations for a beer company, and because I figured out that it's a lot simpler, easier, and less work to pour a beer than to cook the food. So we're gonna get into that real quick. So these are not my knives, but these are knives I've been admiring for a long time, and you know, luckily for my family, once in a while I get to pick up the knives. So, all right. So today we're going to talk, and you're going to probably hear throughout the course of the day, I'm just guessing that there's going to be a lot of recurring themes. One, people, we already heard that, right? So today I'm going to talk a little bit about operational entrepreneurship, the word sustainability in being a creative. To me, in a professional kitchen, in a professional hotel, has everything to do with how operationally sound you are. You can have the best idea, but if you don't have the execution, it kind of goes by the wayside, right? So again, I'm Isaac. I'm now the VP of operations for what we just rebranded last week as Lahaina Brewing Company, formerly Kohola Brewery, okay? So just a little bit of quick background on the brewery. We lost the brewery in the Lahaina fires 2 years ago. I wasn't part of the company at that time. I was actually working at a restaurant called Pacifico on the beach, right in 505 Front Street. I had been there for about 1.5 years at that time, and I moved back from Denver, Colorado, where I was kind of just doing a little bit of a moonlighting thing just after COVID. So fires happen. Now, we all know, most of us in this room were either directly or subdirectly impacted. We probably all, after we dusted ourselves off, thought, okay, well, shucks, what am I gonna do now, right? So I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of a chef's eye view into what it means to be an entrepreneurial from my perspective. So, thank you for listening. Okay, today's agenda. So you're an entrepreneur. And this is kind of what I wanted to include in here. If you think you're an entrepreneur, try running a kitchen for 2 years, okay? So year one, by the time you get to year one, at the end of year one, you're like, wow, this is running a kitchen. I recommend 2 years because we in the hotel and restaurant industry and island, right, hospitality in general, we don't really go by months, we go by events. So festive is kind of the first kickoff for us, right? So as a chef or a hotelier in hospitality, festive, everybody's coming to Maui. We got a high ADR, high average daily rates in the hotels. We're gearing up. So for us, that's kind of one. There's a couple other milestones. New Year's Eve is another one. Valentine's Day is another one. Mother's Day is another one. Daddy's Day, hopefully we get to have that day off and, you know, daddies get to get away. But there's these events that happen. So if anybody's interested, I have a position for you. You can run my kitchen for 2 years. We're gonna talk a little bit about a chef and how they're kind of the entrepreneurial spirit animal for hospitality, okay? Chef of War. Who's been watching Chief of War? Right. Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit about Kamehameha. Just a little shout out, I'm a 99 Kamehameha grad, so if there's any graduates in here. Discovering the prophecy, and if you have been following, you kind of know what that is in regard to Kamehameha. Balance of innovation. So we can be as creative as possible. How do we scale intelligently? For me, systems are just recipes, right? When all else fails, follow the recipe. Men, when all else fails, follow the directions, right? Reading reviews and why it's too late. Lead yourself and the rest will follow. The rest will fall into place. And then the last one, everybody measures success a little bit different. So some of us will know success when you feel it, right? It's not necessarily a monetary value, although that could be something. It's not necessarily getting a product into the marketplace or creating a dish. But sometimes success is measured on a smaller day-to-day scale. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Okay? Next, please. All right, so just to kind of clear a couple things up, chef versus cook. Next, please. Thank you. Chef versus cook. So everybody, the word chef is probably the most, maybe aside from aloha, but most misused term, okay? So in the literal sense, chef is a French word, and it means chief. And so, i.e. Chief of War, Chef of War, that was the play there. So a chef versus a cook. A chef has everything to do with being a creator, right? You're creating all the dishes. Anytime you walk into a restaurant, there's usually two things you're going after. Either the name of the restaurant, you don't know who the chef is, but there's somebody back there making all the good food or good beverages and so on and so forth. Or you're going to that restaurant for the chef, right? If any of us have traveled, I don't know about you guys, but I travel and I base my travel around where we're gonna eat, right? So, and usually I'm following a chef that I've seen on Instagram, Twitter, hopefully not too many YouTube videos. COVID was key there. So you're following the chef. He's also a leader, or she's a leader, right? Within their own kitchens, their own restaurants. They're also the biggest decision maker. They're deciding where we're buying products, where we're getting, which farmers we're using. I met Andy. Where's Andy? On the walk-in. Hey, Andy. Andy's a farmer up in Hali'imaile, and he can tell you all about, we were talking about some challenges there. So they're the decision makers. The chef is also the liaison to everything PR and marketing. Well, back of the house wise. As mentioned, vendor relationships, farmers, fishermen, they're that liaison. And in a lot of cases, the chef is also the liaison between the operation and the ownership group, okay? The cooks, guess what they get to do? They get to think, well, they get to do what we all think a chef does, just get in the kitchen and cook. So cooks are just that, right? Their job is to take the vision of the chef and hopefully in some circumstances make that dish better, right? They get to figure out of the 30 ingredients that go into that dish, what pan it goes in, what size pan it goes in, how clean it should be, when I should wash my hands, believe it or not. That cook needs to take the chef's vision and implement it into a day-to-day process, okay? So two different things. Thank you. Anybody here of Ming Tsai? East meets West with Ming Tsai. Oh, that's good. This is probably the first room that's never ever heard of him. Thank you. So Ming Tsai was the first chef I've ever worked for. Roy Yamaguchi was the second chef I ever worked for. Two very dynamic individuals, personalities, but two very different mindsets, and quite in the dichotomy of what is the culinary world, two very different beings. So Ming, by his name, you could tell he's Chinese, so you can probably guess my first culinary job. If anybody can guess how much I actually got paid by him, if those locals know the Chinese stereotype. This was in Boston, Massachusetts, actually Wellesley, if you know the Boston area. And so Ming was the first chef I ever worked for, and I went from Maui to culinary school in Portland, Oregon, and I had no idea where Boston, Massachusetts was at the time. I literally booked a flight to go and try out for an externship at his restaurant because it was allegedly that good. And just on a whim, I took a risk, fly overnight, land in Boston, taxi at the time, there's no Uber. This is how old I am. And got to Ming's restaurant, and I quickly understood why he was successful. And we'll kind of dive a little bit into that in a little bit. Roy, on the other hand, I started to work for Roy, came back home after my 4 years in Boston, worked for Roy, and Roy was quite the opposite, okay? And here's why. So Ming was a control freak, okay? If you're listening, Ming, I love you. We're still good friends. One restaurant, only wanted one restaurant, got offers to open a restaurant in Vegas, quick $1 million, didn't do it. Control freak, right? He wanted his hands and control over all the food, and he wanted to make sure that every dish went out as it was his last. And true essence of every dish, I'm the cook now. I have to make sure, Chinese guy, had to make sure that every dish was absolutely perfect. So didn't scale, no scale, okay? But did enough volume in that restaurant, got him a cooking show, got some national and international notoriety, currently has 3 cookbooks, and was a developer of himself and his own marketing, but in a very good way, right? He based his scale and his entrepreneurship on quality, not on quantity, okay? Roy, everybody heard, I hope somebody's heard of Roy, right? Okay, thank you. Whew. So Roy Yamaguchi, at one point, had 32 restaurants, okay? When I joined Roy back in 2005, I think he had like 21, and he was trying to get to 30 in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. I ended up opening up 2 Roy's restaurants in LA, well, outside of LA, in Woodland Hills and then downtown LA. Roy's motto was to develop people, get them ready, and scale. Partnered with Outback Steakhouse, some of us probably remember that. And Outback would, anytime you've seen a Roy's restaurant in California, you would see an Outback, okay? So they bought real estate together, they did everything together, they're partners. Roy scaled, Ming didn't. two equally successful people, very different dynamic, right? So managing scale versus one unit. Ming, one unit, Roy, managing scale. Eventually, Roy kind of got back down, and currently Roy has Humble Market Kitchen and a bunch of other restaurants, but only in Hawaii, minus a couple exceptions. He's I guess, franchised out. I don't know the exact breakdown. I can probably get it for you. So that's that. Does everybody understand now what a chef is versus a cook? Good. All right, Chef of War. Discovering the prophecy for those of us who have watched Chief of War, and just for those of us who haven't, Kamehameha essentially got handed down Kukailimoku, which is the symbolic war god, from the chief of the island of Hawaii at the time, got handed down to Kamehameha versus his son Keoa. So Kamehameha kind of got leapfrogged into a situation based on, back then was the prophecy of the gods, right? So the prophecy and discovering the prophecy in entrepreneurial sense, for me, has everything to do with destiny, right? Who are you? What do you stand for? What is your purpose? And truly believing that for yourself, right? And there's times in the show that I think Kamehameha kind of doubted himself, right? We all go through that, right? We're all thinking, like, when we're waking up in the morning, the alarm's going off and we're hitting snooze 4 times, like, whew, I really don't want to get in there, right? We've all been there. But even Kamehameha, with the prophecy, he's been told he's going to be the next king, right? Even he had doubts. So really understanding what our purpose is. The next one is, what are you willing to sacrifice? I remember going to Boston and giving up a lot, right? Giving up the ocean, giving up family. I didn't know where the heck Boston was. Thankfully, some guy named Tom Brady came and saved the day, because at that time, Tom started winning some Super Bowls, so it made me stay a little bit longer. And then for how long, right? My time in Boston with Ming was so pivotal for me personally, because I went to culinary school, but I had to force myself to think about my 4 years with Ming was continually kind of a bachelor's degree in culinary, right? How do I really hone in and tap into Ming's brain and his operational entrepreneurship, and his marketability for himself, to make sure that that makes my life as a culinarian, my life as a chef, much more sustainable and able to pivot forward, right? Being the best cook doesn't equal being a great chef, right? Just because you can cook the dishes that were handed to you and you can replicate them, we're all on YouTube, we're all on, we're all on all the social media platforms getting ideas. And if you're not, you should be, right? But that doesn't mean that you're gonna copy it exactly the same. You might change out an ingredient, you might change out a technique, might change out a philosophy, but being the best cook doesn't necessarily mean the best chef. You might have the best product, but you might not get that to market from an entrepreneurial standpoint the most effectively, right? So collecting future kings and queens is an art. So this goes back to people, right? As a chef, I've made some really, really bad mistakes. I've hired the wrong people. I've partnered with wrong people. I've done a lot of that. Collecting future kings and queens, to me, are everything about seeing potential in your workers. I know some people are, I have it written down, what is it, solopreneurs? That's the first time I heard that word. Doesn't mean that you're exempt from collecting future kings and queens, right? They don't necessarily have to work directly for you, but they can be in your circle, right? So the reason why that's important is because of the next point, where through our travels and through our businesses, how many times have we called back somebody from a previous business or a previous job that said, hey, remember we worked on that project, or remember that recipe? What was the ratio of sugar to acid to salt was in there? And I still have cooks that can, like that, because they did that every day. I'm the chef, I don't do it every day. The cooks do, right? So that's the discovery the prophecy part, okay? All right, this is a fun one. Balancing innovation and scaling intelligently. So scaling intelligently has everything to do with your resources. Obviously, it takes some sort of money, or maybe not, right? But balancing of the innovation of scaling, they go hand in hand, because you can innovate a product, right? I have it's a terrible picture, sorry. This is actually the first time I created a PowerPoint, so bear with me. I'm usually just off the cuff. Thank you. In the top right corner, Kohola Brewery in Wailea, we have a soft shell crab musubi. Yeah, everybody's had musubi here, Spam typically, but that's basically a California roll, okay, musubi style, with a tempura soft shell crab on top. Okay, pretty simple, right? Kind of makes sense. Crab, California's crab, avocado, cucumber. You see it now? Nori, a little bit of kabayaki on the plate, and a leaf of shiso, right? So the reason why that picture is there is because it can be viewed as innovative, right? That's the first time that I've seen that in a restaurant. But how do we scale that, right? And how do you scale that intelligently? I can't go put that in its true form. Well, maybe we can nowadays, but I can't take that in its true form, same temperature, same crispiness, same salt content, same crispiness of the nori, and same freshness of the shiso, and go put it in Costco, right? Unless they get rid of their pizza ovens, and maybe I can go do that. So sometimes your innovation is going to be scaled by the execution piece, okay? So scaling intelligently, sometimes you gotta go back to the drawing board a little bit and say, okay, well, how can we get this done? And that's okay. And the point is you just gotta get your idea on a plate, even if it's one, and tweak it from there, right? So finding familiarity in great new ideas, it's familiar, right? It's a musubi. We all heard of musubi. I wouldn't say it's a great new idea. We sell probably like 20 of them out of 300 people we there. Yeah, it's okay, right? But familiarity also builds trust in the marketplace as well, right? I kind of have an 80-20 rule. 80% of our menus in all of our restaurants are familiar or twist on familiarity. 20% are creative, where we're kind of pushing the envelope, okay? So innovation needs to accompany training. So this is the other piece of operational execution, right? If you're not training your staff, in some cases, you got to train your guests. We'll get to reviews here in a short moment. And then sometimes you got to be able to train or sell it to the media as well, so that a new innovative idea gets to be scaled, so people talk about it, okay? Next, please. Thank you. All right, so systems are a chef's recipe. So it doesn't, for me, just from I guess from a personal perspective, systems can change, right? Systems are ways of doing things that are typically either based on your talent that you have within the workplace, right? There's different levels of cooks. We're all different levels of cooks. There's different experiences. I've had dishwashers that come up with dishes that eventually go on the menu because their skill or their experience in their past has innovation, right? And they have that experience to be able to evolve a recipe into what we're doing in that particular restaurant. So recipes constantly evolve. systems still need accountability. So just because you're creating a system and it's on paper, it's an SOP, whatever it is, again, systems are recipes. You have to taste, right? How many of us have gone to a restaurant one time, had a great meal, or maybe not so great meal, and then 2 weeks later you go back and you're like, oh, that's changed, right? We all have, right? Or we're at home and we make our favorite lasagna, and then the next time you make it, they're out of that pasta that you bought, right? So you gotta use a different one, maybe the whole wheat one or the gluten-free one, different product, right? So systems and recipes change, but you have to be able to, we all are the creators. We know what that vision is. We know that original inspiration for whatever idea you're creating. In our cases, it's recipes. So you are the check and balance, right? So you have to taste. And proverbially speaking, you should be tasting your systems as well as your recipes. Recipes are only as good as our weakest ingredient. So this translates as well. If you have a weaker ingredient, less than, the recipe is going to change, right? If you have an employee that's not trained up, your system's going to need some improving, right? And if all else fails, read the directions and then read them again, right? Next, please. All right, reading the reviews, it may be late AF. I'm not gonna say that because I might get slapped, but everybody knows what AF is? All right, so today's day and age, everybody's an influencer. Everybody, right? There's no person more scrutinized than the chef of a restaurant, the server serving the table, or the manager that made a bad decision. I like this one. Somebody told me this a long time ago, camera eats first. So we all do this, we're all guilty. Before we taste the food, we're taking a picture, right? Camera eats first. Taste your food every time. So this is from a back of the house, or this is from a operational perspective, right? Not from the reviewer. Taste your food every time. Training, know your staff, each one and every day. Those of us who manage people, our people have different days every day, right? So knowing them every day is gonna be able to, you as a leader and an entrepreneur in that sense, you're gonna be able to either bend and mold them, or maybe sometimes they gotta send them home, but bend and mold them to get the best out of them for that day, okay? Which is extremely important. It all plays into consistency, right? Your lead cook has a bad day, maybe that's why that dish was off that second week that you went back, okay? Vendors, farmers, and fishermen, and ranchers as well, are really the low-key heroes. I'm gonna tie this all up really quickly, but reading the reviews, if you're not doing these things, it's too late, right? So if you have a negative review that, let's just assume that it's correct, you should have caught that before in your operation. So how that translates, we all have different businesses and different entrepreneurial minds and eyes and ears, but make sure that product is what you want as the creator before it hits the shelf, right? Be hypercritical of yourself. It might cost a little bit of money to recall something before it gets to Costco, or recall something before it gets to the swap meet, right? That's your review. And that review that's negative is gonna be 10 times worse. They say anyway, I don't know if this is true, I think it's more, but they say 10 positive ones equal 1 negative. I think it's probably more like nowadays, maybe 100 to 1. But we all need to do this, taste your food every time, know your staff, and then lean on vendors, which are your farmers, your fishermen, your ranchers, but also your broadliners as well. Some of us, we go and shop at VIP, or that could be considered a vendor, right? The reason why these are important, I come from a school of thought of having, much like the prophecy in building relationships with your staff, these folks that are entrepreneurs in and of themselves, you're dealing with other entrepreneurs. entrepreneurs, right? Some of them are solopreneurs, some of them work for billion-dollar companies. But leveraging them to let them know your expectation and making sure that they're delivering on that really kind of gets that entrepreneur to work for you, right? So, for instance, I'll give you guys a couple great examples. I deal with a company called Eskimo Candy, okay? And over the years, I've been dealing with them for probably 15 years or so. My first interaction with them, they had a salesperson that would walk into the restaurant unannounced, no appointment, and try to immediately show me the sheet of specials he had and try to sell them to me, okay? So immediately, I just politely asked him to leave. We were busy, and just to make an appointment. So over time, he kept doing it. Eventually, I just cut them off, which was probably at the time, I don't know, maybe $6,000 a month or so. Kind of significant. And the company didn't understand why. So I had a meeting with the owners. I said, listen, like, you guys got to help me help you. And your job is to support me, right? And support the restaurant and support the business, just like farmers, and laying out expectations of what we want the farmers to grow, how we want their avocados to look, how we want their beets to look, okay? Now, when you do that, it's your commitment to them to make sure that when they're growing something specifically for you, or vendors bringing in a product for you, we live on an island. We are now verbally committing to that crop, right? So it's a give and take there. Fishermen, same thing. Fisherman calls you from the ocean and says, hey, I got 100 pounds of mahi-mahi, and you're like, oh yeah, I'll take them all. And then when they get there, you only take 50 pounds. It's not how, it's obvious, but that's not how it jives. So that's all plays into reviews, because that all leads to consistency. Having your vendors work for you, having your farmers work for you, having your fishermen delivering fish that has been iced properly, so on and so forth, okay? 1 minute, thank you. Pretty simple, right? Okay. Next slide, please. Just when you think you got it all figured out, so this is our brewery. I used to go and have fun there before I was an employee. You can skip through maybe slowly the next 2 or 3 slides. So even if you do all that stuff we just talked about, this can still happen, right? But you still have that structure and that framework and that scaffolding to be able to pivot and get off your feet, right? So lead yourself, self-accountability, have discipline, and you gotta have grit, okay? Take calculated risks, we touched on that. And then just to kind of touch back on your staff, guest community, they're all your partners, right? People. And you as a partner need to be humble yourself and also be curious, right? Ask what that farmer's growing next, or that fisherman's going out to catch. Next slide. This is a little bit of our beer. Just get everybody thirsty. It's never too early. Okay, so my pivot now, after being a chef, was to take all that information over the course of my career and make sure that now I didn't have one revenue stream, just food. Now it's much easier to pour beer. Now I have 2 revenue streams. So the message today for you folks is, when you are scaling, diversify so you have a couple different pieces in the marketplace, right? And in a chef's competitive advantage, or entrepreneur's, is understanding the operational piece so that you're sustainable, right? You might have a great product. Maybe you want to bring a partner on that understands that operational piece, okay? And I'll leave you with this, is sometimes losing the most can also mean doing the most, right? Motivational. It gets you off your dusts you off, but all that scaffolding of stuff that we just all covered has everything to do with how you pick yourself up and move forward. I think that's it, but thank you guys.